We're back. We're back. This is the best Pokemon. I lied last time. I said Torkoal was the best. I lied. There is no way anyone can convince me otherwise that this Behemoth, this absolute legend, can be anything but the best. He is tall, he is wide, he is everything you'd ever want from a Pokemon. He has no checks. Tapu Bulu cannot survive. This Pokemon is insane. Alright, why is it insane? Well, let's have a look at its stats first off. It's got good HP, okay attack, same as Torkoal, good defense, special attack, just enough, special defense decent, and speed, you don't really use speed on him, so it's fine. Unlike Torkoal, the absolute menace, the fastest thing alive. So with that being said, what's its typing? Water Drown. Ooh! Is that the best type combo in the game? Wow. It is. It is the best type combo. Mega Swampert OU, he's Water Drowned. Every Water Drowned Pokemon is great, apart from this one. Why does Wishcash exist? It does. Why does it have Dragon Dance? Why is this a dragon? Anyway, that's not important. A few resistances, quite a few neutral hits, but specifically a 4x weakness to grass and nothing else. Which might make you think, oh, you should run Rindo Berry, like Seismitoad, but that is actual hogwash. It's a bad idea, do not do it. Do not run Rindo Berry Quagsire. It's not good. Why is it not good? Because Quagsire doesn't really do much with one turn. Most of the time. Because the thing with Seismitoad is, using that one turn, it can get rocks up, it can knock off, it can do a lot in that one turn. Quagsire, as any intelligent being does, thinks about the long game. His plans come into effect 20 turns later, so Rindo Berry is never useful. Because sadly, Quagsire does not know how to pick up rocks and throw them at his enemies. Well, he doesn't know how to do it stealthily anyway. That being said, let's have a look at what moves it does have. Starting with very basic, Earthquake, School, Recover Toxic. I mean, this is pretty much just the Quagsire set right here. If you're running Unaware, if you're running a wall, then this is pretty much all you're ever going to use. Earthquake hits everything pretty good. School burns. Recover, because Recovery's good on a wall. And Toxic, because Toxic's good on stuff that you can't actually hurt. And also means that a lot of stuff that's tried to set up just gets Toxic. Now, speaking of setup, before I go on to the other moves, I'm just going to discuss abilities, because this isn't structured at all. So he has Water Absorb, which is actually pretty useful, specifically because you can beat Rotom Wash. Rotom Wash actually can't touch a Water Absorb Quagsire. Which, I mean, the same could be said of Seismitoad, but I think Quagsire is funnier, so I think it's better on Quagsire than it is on Seismitoad. Either way, Water Absorb's pretty decent, actually. I think if there's nothing you need Unaware for, Water Absorb can actually be a pretty good surprise a lot of the time. I think Damp is useless, because most of the time Quagsire can live a self-destruct, or an explosion. So why are you actually trying to prevent them from using it? I mean, it's useful in Suicide Cup, but like, I feel like that's a pretty low standard to be held at. Anyway, Quagsire is known for Unaware, let's be honest. Ignore stat changes of opponents. Well, Lucha's at +6? No, it's not, it's at +0. But what I think people always neglect about Unaware is that it ignores defense raises. Which I think is very cool, because Quagsire can be hitting something which is at +6 in both defenses as if it didn't have any. Which is why Quagsire is in fact the only counter to Evil Mew. His cosmic power, dumb stuff, is actually unbeatable apart from Quagsire. There is no other Unaware Pokemon in the game. I mean, look, I don't see any others, I just see Quagsire. I think Quagsire is actually the best Pokemon because of that. Unironically, I think it's actually good for Komodo, because you can Earthquake it pretty safely, while you ignore specifically the Iron Defense raises for Body Press doing more damage, which is a very useful trait actually. and it means it can actually hold up well against a lot of the Iron Defense body press sets for stuff like Tomoe, stuff like Renregis, Torkoal if they're crazy like me, stuff like that. And I do think that for some sets, the ignoring defensive boost is actually really useful. Anyway, it also doesn't ignore your own stat changes, it just ignores others. So, while Quagsire doesn't actually have that many boosting moves, really it only has these three. These three are actually good on it. Curse already bolsters its two best stats, attack and defense, while getting rid of its worst stat, speed. Stockpile increases both its defenses, where you can only use it 3 times, and then Amnesia raises the def. All three of these are actually kind of usable. Stockpile is definitely the easiest to use, because sometimes after a stockpile, a team just can't kill Quagsire. This is more especially useful for draft, where sometimes people might not want to bring a grass type move, because your team might have a lot of grass resists. Just it might not be worth it if Quagsire hasn't been brought much. I think a stockpiled Quag can just take over a game completely. Curse is definitely also useful, especially if you're facing a team that doesn't have that many special attackers and you think you don't be able to have the chance to just curse up. And Amnesia is pretty useful if you're able to get a free turn off of a physical attacker and then get an Amnesia for a special attacker that comes in. Because then you can recover straight afterwards and just start beating it 1v1. Because that's the thing really, Unaware just sort of helps you 1v1 stuff. Which is why it's so useful on stall, because obviously, if you can't 1v1 this huge setup sweeper that abuses stall Pokemon, then stall pretty much dies. Because stall's only options for that sort of thing is just Clefable or Quagsire. And sometimes they actually want to run Magic Guard Clefable just because it's so useful as well for absorbing status for stall, even if something like Toxapex can do it better. But some people don't want to run Toxapex, so I get that. Anyway, back to the moves. We went over a few of these. Rest, useful if you're doing a stockpile set. Getting rid of status is very important. Sleep Talk, obligatory. Then we get to the good moves. I think special attacking Quagsire is pretty dumb, but it's not that dumb. I mean, you've seen this calc. It can get work done. I think special attacking Quagsire has a definite niche. I think in some matches you can bring it and actually go off with it. I think for stuff like Gliscor, who can't touch you in general just because of your natural bulk, something like Tapu Bulu that's always going to want to switch into you, I think special attacking, even if, you know, maybe not modest, maybe you're some like mixture, you know, you can still 2-hit KO Bulu pretty consistently, even without investment, just because of its weird access to poison moves, which is honestly, like, really good. Like, being able to have a potential of OHKOing Bulu as it comes in, just with Sludge Wave, is really useful. Anyway, there's also stuff like Hydra that you can use, you know, just the usual water-type special attacks, and I think it actually has a pretty diverse moveset in that regard. It has water-type moves, ice-type moves, Focus Blast, Sludge Wave, Sludge Bomb, Earth Power, Ancient Power, and you know, you can even run Acid Spray if you're feeling extra special and you just want to kill one thing in a 1v1. Am I saying you should run Whirlpool Acid Spray? Yes. Yes, you should. It's a good set. Great set. You can beat every Pokemon with it. I mean, there is no competition. Could Torkoal beat Whirlpool Acid Spray? No. No, it couldn't. And Torkoal can beat every other Pokemon. I think there is just nothing anyone can do. Then you have Parrot Punch, which is a strange thing, because it falls under this boosting moves that Quagsire technically has, and I think this could actually work in some weeks. I don't think if a team doesn't have a Ghost type, you might want to consider it, because I think just having this Quag just ramp up over time, while the enemy team has to really position around it accordingly, because they can't set up on it, or in it, or to beat it, just means that you can actually become quite the threat without any investment at all. Like, zero investment Quag is 206, so at +2, you're already at 412, and at +6, you're at 824 attack, which is honestly really respectable. That's close to, like, Mega Garchomp after 1 SD, which, yeah, I mean, it takes a while. But realistically, you know, Power Punch has 32 PP, you can do it multiple times, and just get with it. Like, stockpile Power Up Punch, and then rest and, like, another move, or, like, Sleep Talk, is a set. I think this would actually work into some teams. And I brought something similar once on Wooper, and I didn't get to play it, but, you know, I think it would have worked 100% of the time. Anyway, you know, it has good physical coverage, actually. It has Iron Tail, water moves, ice moves, Focus Punch, useful for if you want to run a sub-punch set. Haze is another actually useful move, in case you just want to use Unaware to get rid of boosts, because it doesn't have any sort of phasing in the form of Whirlwind or anything, so it has to rely on Haze to get rid of boosts, which can be an issue sometimes, because something can just keep on setting up in front of you while you just have to keep on clicking Haze. But the fact that you can ignore if they keep on boosting and just recover first, so they continue to, like, say SD in front of you and you get to 100% health, is useful for using Haze, and it's probably much better than Toxapex at using it. Because while Toxapex can just switch out with Regenerator, a mon that stays into Toxapex can just set up for days, even with Haze having such high PP. Liquidation, probably better than Ultra Tail in most regards. Amnesia already talked about. Bulldoze, definitely a weird one. Lowering speed usually isn't that helpful in singles. Well, for something like Quagsire anyway. But I mean, there's definitely, I think, an opportunity to go for it, sometimes. Not often, though. Guard Swap is a move I want to talk about, because I think Guard Swap is very epic. So what Guard Swap does is, swaps your defense and speed def changes with the target. So, with the Komodo example from earlier, if it gets to +6 defense, its body press is still not going to be doing much. Let me actually calc that. Just get the usual set into Komodo. At +6 defense, it's still not going to be doing much. It does 27%, and then you can Guard Swap, and then you go +6. And now all of a sudden, it does 8%. Which is honestly incredible. I think Guard Swap is a move people need to realize exists. Because it is a move they kept in Gen 8, keep in mind. And it is a move that can just go off sometimes. This is another reason why it's so good against the Cosmic Power Mew set. If Mew just goes to +6 with Cosmic Power, you can just go to +6 with Quagsire. And all of a sudden, you can't die. You have to be crit. And even if you're crit, there is a chance you just live with your natural bulk alone, which is honestly nuts. And I think you should definitely consider Guard Swap on, if not just Quagsire, on a lot of other mons, because there's definitely a lot of use for Guard Swap. Let me go to Nat Dex so we can see more. I definitely think some of these mons here could actually have use out of Guard Swap. I think something like Skarm against Mew, something like Bronzong into, I don't know. You know, there's definitely uses. I think Guard Swap Dom with into Komodo would actually be incredible, because Komodo would probably just Iron Defense up because Darmanitan usually can't touch it, and then you could go +6 defense, and then all of a sudden you actually just Zen mode the entire time. But that's pretty dumb. I think Quagsire is definitely the best user of Guard Swap in the game, just period. Then we have Counter, which I think is really good on Quagsire. If you're not just running Sash, I think Counter just for something that sets up, like Hawlucha, you know, Sizzle, stuff like that. I think Counter can just act as a really good way of just removing them. Mud Sport is a personal favorite of mine. I don't think it's obviously team reliant, but Mud Sport's a great move. It reduces electric type damage by 1/3. Well, to 1/3, what I should say. So something like Hawlucha that would get hit super effectively by electric moves actually takes less from an electric move than it would from a neutral hit. Which is honestly great. I love it. I love Mud Sport. And I'd suggest Water Sport as well. But little did I know, Quagsire does not get Water Sport. It just messes around in mud, doesn't mess around in water. You know what, I can't judge Quagsire though, because if I judged him, he would kill me. But I think Mud Sport's definitely a gimmick you should maybe trying. Especially with something, you know, like Weakness Policy, Halucha in the back, stuff like that. Especially in a draft game against a Koko, especially with maybe some Natdex laddering, because Koko is obviously Koko there. Stuff like that, it's actually pretty useful. Encore, pretty great as well. Especially if you may be a Haze Encore set, and you try to pretend you're not that big of a threat to a sweeper. You can Encore them, force them to switch out more than Unaware would usually help you switch them out, which is useful. Earth Power, if you're going to be going Schooled, and you don't want to, and you want to have strong Schooled and Earth Power, or if Earthquake's just weaker than Earth Power for a certain week. Ice Punch, Ice Beam, good ice coverage. Seismic Toss, great just overall chip. Doesn't hit Ghost obviously, but doesn't really need to. Icy Wind, similar to Bulldoze, I think there are times it could definitely be useful, but generally maybe not. I think Icy Wind could work if you were to just Icy Wind something setting up in front of you, and then just let something go in, and then just abuse the fact that it's at tiny speed and just kill it, but at that point you're basically sacking Quagsire when he could have done the job himself, because Quagsire can do any job himself. Infestation, similar to Whirlpool, just trap stuff, you know, use Binding Band, use Toxic, just kill things on its own. Mimic, I always have to mention Mimic. I think mimicking something like Stealth Rocks for Quagsire would be huge in a match. But I definitely think Quagsire can lure in a lot of Stealth Rockers just due to the fact that it has no hazard game, and it can just take that hazard game away from them. Natural Gift also has to have a mention, because of the fact that it's just great. I think Natural Gift for certain types like Poison, while you already have Sludge Wave, but if you want to go physical, you can get Natural Gift to be a Poison type move, you can get it to be a Flying type move even. There's a lot of types it could be, which would actually be useful for Quagsire, just due to its one weakness, letting it choose its Natural Gift type pretty easily. And I think this is not something you're going to be running often, at all. But I think definitely if you think you're able to punish a switch with Natural Gift, you should maybe consider at least trying it out, because I think it's a great move. Rain Dance Sandstorm have to have special mention, just because what if a weather team needs another setter, you know? Dynamic Punch Stomping Tantrum, this is a great set right here. It's similar to Torkoal from last week, what am I saying? Yeah, it's similar to Torkoal in the fact that you can become Fast Man and then Stomping Tantrum to deal a lot, but this time Stomping Tantrum is Stab, which means you are doing big damage. Once again, am I saying the set is good? Maybe. I don't know anymore. All I know is I really want to use it. Swagger is a super dumb move, and it should always be banned. But if your draft legalizes it, then Swagger Quagsire is ridiculous. Because you can ignore their attack boosts, and just make them kill themselves in front of you. Which is, it's just not right, it's not fair. That's why Swagger is banned. If anyone tells you Swagger should not be banned, look at Swagger Quagsire, Swagzire for God's sake. It's in the name. Finally we have Yawn. Yawn's a move. Yawn's great. I think Yawn is good for forcing switches, just because sometimes Quagsire can struggle to do so, especially against stuff that doesn't care about being toxic. And otherwise, it's just good to spread status around a team with Quagsire, because otherwise, you know, on bulkier sets, it doesn't do much. Speaking of the sets, though, it has a few. I think there's less than Torkoal here, but I definitely think there's still quite a few. You know, Unaware Wall, this is, I mean, you can literally just go here Unaware Wall, you know. It's a very basic set, Schooled, Recover, Toxic, Earthquake. You know, you can slot Haze in there, you can slot other stuff in there. It's very basic, very effective. nothing really does what Quagsire does, just in terms of sitting in front of something and just not caring. And I mean, the unaware set just takes full advantage of everything that Quagsire has. I think Specs is very silly, and I love it. Choice Specs Quagsire, as you saw with that Ice Beam count against Lystor, it did about 70. So Specs Oto's Lystor with Ice Beam. Specs will Oto Tapu Bulu with with Sludge Wave. It does a huge amount of damage to a lot of stuff just with Hydro Pump, just because of the fact that, I mean, Water's just a good type to spam out, and Hydro Pump's a good move to spam out. And sure, you know, it reaches 251 special attack. It's not the best, but I think it's actually pretty good. I think a Specs Quagsire set could take you places, especially if somebody is not expecting it. This is definitely a draft thing, though. I think on ladder, if you're running Specs Quagsire, you have a Death Wish. I think Banded is worse than Specs, but I think Banded definitely also has a place. It doesn't get poison coverage, which is a big reason why Specs can work. But it definitely has a physical moveset. It has Edge Quake, it has Aqua Tail Liquidation, it has some other moves as well, like Facade, you know, just Iron Tail, Ice Punch. You know, it has good coverage overall, but lacking the poison type move that sort of makes Specs work as a set is pretty rough for Banded. I call it Snool cosplay. I think Rest Talk Curse with one attack, usually gonna be Earthquake, is definitely viable in some circumstances. It definitely doesn't do it as well as Snorlax, because Snorlax succeeds with that set through the fact that it just has enough HP and Spadef to just not take damage on its special side much. I mean, seriously, look at that. It's just insane how bulky this is, especially. It's basically chancy. But Quagsire can't do that, so its curse sets aren't as effective as something like Snorlax, but it's still good. It's still bolstering its two best stats in attack and defense. It definitely, especially if somebody already struggled with Quag, just making yourself a better version of Quag by bolstering your best stats, weakening your worst, is pretty good. I think it's maybe less usable than Stockpile, but I think it's still usable. Then you have the best set, the Blunder Policy set, which isn't a set, but it's a set. That's all I'm gonna say. I think, yeah, in the same way that Curse can be a win con, I think Stockpile is very easily a win con. I think once you get one Stockpile up, there are very few mons that can actually two-hit you, especially if they don't have a grass move. And I think just being able to get to +3 defense, +3 Spadef is actually enough for Quagsire. I don't think it needs anything more. Like, Stockpile is usually looked over just because of the fact that it just doesn't get you to +6. But Quagsire doesn't need +6 because nothing can set up to get +6 against it. Which is actually a big difference compared to normal stuff, to be honest. Then there's Parrot Punch, just in general. I just have it with Recover. I think that set would just be, you know, Parrot Punch, Earthquake, Liquidation, and then Recover. I think this could definitely work if they maybe are prepping pretty hard for defensive Quagsire and they're having a lot of checks for it, to be able to just Parrot Punch on something on like a switch, and then Earthquake could maybe help. This is actually the one set I would actually consider running Rindo Berry on. But otherwise, Rindo just isn't good on Quag. Otherwise, we have Sub Punch. I mean, it's still technically a set. There's definitely mons that do it better. There's something called a Breloom that exists, which is the Sub Punch Pokemon. But Quagsire can actually make it work. I think Sub Quagsire is actually really good. I think being able to avoid status pretty consistently, the fact that with Stockpile its subs are pretty hard to break. Overall, I think Sub is a good move on Quag, and I think Sub Punch could technically work. Because Quag's Focus Punch is the same base power as a doubled Stomping Tantrum, and that is the best move in the game. When you have Whirlpool set, I mean, I just hate this set, so I'm not going to talk about it. Yawn Focus Punch, which is similar to Sub Punch, but better, because even if they attack you to stop the Focus Punch, they go to sleep. And finally we have Focus Sash Counter, which I think is honestly a good set for draft, especially if you have nothing else that can beat a setup mon. I think if you have Focus Sash Counter, I think you can catch a lot of things off guard. And I think especially for certain mons like Mega Gyarados that can ignore your unaware, something like maybe even Mold Breaker or Lucha, I think Focus Sash Counter is great. Because a lot of Mold Breaker mons are just physical attackers. If we take a look, stuff like Excadrill, Gyarados, Hawlucha, you know, we have to go down to Ampharos before we get a special attacking Mold Breaker mon here. And then again, we have to go down to, well, nothing actually. Ampharos is the only special attacking Mold Breaker mon, and it's an electric type. So, you know. Actually, does Ampharos get a grass type move? Huh, no it doesn't. I thought it'd get Energy Ball. Just gets Cotton Guard. Anyway, yeah. I think counter Focus Sash is great against Mold Breaker mons that you are maybe scared of. That can maybe set up on your team pretty easily and can take a game over. I've certainly considered it against some Mold Breaker mons in the past. And I almost considered it for a match pretty recently, but I decided against it. Because it's great, but it's definitely inconsistent, as most Sash sets are. Obviously, you need pretty good hazard control just to get it on the field with its Sash intact, and it does rely a lot on your opponent just attacking it, because once you reveal counter, it's pretty obvious what you're trying to do, and I definitely think that can be exploited. Anyway, in terms of items, I mean, pretty boring. Leftovers, you know, just the best overall on bulkier sets. Specs for the Spec set, Binding Band if you're evil, Choice Band if you're dumb, Blunder Policy if you're a genius, Pinch Berries if you're boring and want to be Road and Wash, Focus Sash if you want to counter stuff, and Helmet if you don't actually need leftovers for a week. Because I think there are definitely weeks where you don't need leftovers, and Helmet Chip is very useful for Quagsire. Because, you know, this mon, he does not want to hurt you, he wants a hug. So, you might as well make your hugs hurt. Anyway, in terms of team options for Quagsire, I mean, it's pretty obvious. You want to patch up the grass resist as best you can. Definitely in ladder, Flapple, Appleton are both great, 4 times grass resists. I mean, dragons in general are just great for Quagsire. Grass resist great. It just resists a lot of things that Quagsire might not enjoy, and especially defensive dragons, my favorite being Goodra, obviously because of Sap Sipper, just go really well with Quag, just because of the fact that it can pretty much take on any physical attacker you could ever think of. Like, seriously, it takes a Mega Garchomp in the sand to be able to wear down Quagsire. There's so much setup involved in that, and it still can just barely 2-hit KO with leftovers. And I believe with Protect it becomes a roll, unless I'm forgetting this. Just look, Garchomp's normal Earthquake, you know, max attack, not adamant, is still only doing 33 to 39. You make this Mega, you make this adamant, and it still doesn't 2-hit KO. You have to be in sand for anything to go your way. And this thing has 170 attack. Like, I mean, that's just it. That's all you need to know. That's why Quagsire is such a good mon, and I can't believe it's in NU right now. This is not an NU mon. This, I mean, it doesn't care about what tier it goes in. But I swear, looking at NU, let me go back to a Gen 8 format. Looking at NU, the fact that there's so many grass types here is the only reason it's getting oppressed right now. Until, I mean, yeah, you know, it loses to Eldegoss, it loses to Ferroseed, it loses to Flapple, it loses to Gourgeist, it loses to Abomasnow. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, Arctivish with Freeze Dry, you know, etc. You know, there's a lot of stuff that you just can't touch, which I think is sort of characteristic of Quag, because So, you know, it doesn't like touching much, but what it does touch, it touches well. And this metaphor is not good. This doesn't sound right. But I think Quagsire's best tier is definitely OU. Let's just be honest. I think being able to take on Rotom Heat, Rotom Wash pretty consistently is great. I think being able to ignore all of HO's setup is also great. I think the fact that Stool is weak right now is probably reducing Quagsire's usage in OU by a lot, but I definitely think its potential on balance, especially as a third slot with Clefable and probably your Ghost Resist like Mandibuzz, is always really useful. But I definitely think I could make an OU team that was something like, you know, Quagsire, just a normal set, Clef because 50% usage, probably Komodo as a Stealth Rocker, and as a Shadow Ball switch-in, and just a general check for Quagsire's Grass weakness, and then, you know, whatever else I want as my offensive core, you know. I think that is just, I think Quagsire can fit on a lot of teams. I just think it's very useful. It has two very strictly defined weaknesses, which is special attacks and grass types, and those can be patched up really easily. You know, Max Spadef Clef, just Dragons in general, people think that it needs a lot of team support, but it really doesn't. It can carry a team with just how versatile it can be in taking on physical threats. That's the thing, it's versatile in a different way to some versatile mons. You might think Mew is versatile, which obviously it is. I mean, it has every set possible. But Quagsire is versatile in the fact that it just doesn't care about what it's facing. As long as it's not a grass type, Quagsire can maybe beat it. And if it is a grass type, it has to catch these sludge waves. Which is honestly, when I found out Quag got sludge wave, I was so happy about it. Because I think it's just such a weird move. It just works. It just helps. Anyway, speaking of poison stuff, I think poison types are excellent with Quag. I think Alolan Muck is probably your best bet, because of the fact that it is specially defensive, it covers pretty much every weakness of Quagsire, just in one mon. I think Skuntank's also great, it gives you default for hazards, which Quag can sort of ignore sometimes, because obviously it doesn't have anything outside of Mimic. I think, yeah, Grass Resist, just generally, Stool, you know, I mean, if you want to build Stool, I mean, it definitely is a playstyle. I mean, let me make Stool right now. Toxapex, Chansey, Gliscor, Zapdos. You know, this is a very fun team for people who enjoy having fun. But you will never catch me playing Stool, unless it is very good Stool. Gen 4 Stool is great. Hail Stool is amazing. Gen 7 Stool, you're not catching me playing that. Archetypes, yeah, I've said this. Balance, great. Stool, pretty much essential if you don't want to run Clef. Bulky offense, I think definitely for more offensive sets like the Curse set. I mean, really, you know, this majestic creature, it can do whatever it wants. It is unaware to social norms. It doesn't care. And that's really what Quagsire is. It's a mon that just doesn't care. It doesn't care if you set up. It doesn't care about grass type moves. It doesn't care about anything. This absolute behemoth of a creature has no counters. Not even Torkoal can take it on. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Just draft Quagsire, use Quagsire and Ladder. Just use him. He is the best boy. He is the strongest Pokemon. His eyes are filled with wonder and curiosity, wondering what can counter him and finding out nothing does.